We have many interesting sessions this afternoon, an engaging mix of panels, case studies, and presentations, all of which I hope you find informative. I'd now like to invite Cheryl and Andy from Dagger Wink, who will be sharing their insights on what's standing in the way of companies as they operationalize their ESG strategies.
Thank you. Hi, everyone.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone. So thank you for making the choice to join us. I know you had some decisions to make about which session. We're going to make it the best 20 minutes of your day. That's a promise. So I'm going to hand over to Cheryl, who's going to kick us off and talk about what we're going to talk about.
Excellent. We're here today because just because a company has a strategy, goals, and a deadline, people are waking up like that doesn't mean it's going to magically happen. And the idea that there's a sustainability office and that things have maybe happened in a silo, we're starting to see companies that are almost panicking because the breadth of, of change that's required, and maybe sustainability isn't like other corporate strategies in terms of implementing them. So we're going to lean into what does it take to operationalize a sustainability strategy through the whole company to make progress. And first, just quickly, who's Dagger Wink? We're a global change consulting firm. You're probably all aware that most transformations, they have a 2/3 failure rate. A lot of times that's just because of people, and companies get in that cycle of like they try and transform and then they fail and everybody's tired, and they try and transform and they fail and they're tired. So we lean into that hardest part of change was about people, from leaders to that front line, so that we're trying to help companies do change right. And one of those is in the area of sustainability. So we're going to give you today, you've made this choice. We have actually been sponsoring an HBR study, a global study on operationalizing sustainability. It was just fielded in February. It's not being released until May, but HBR has given us permission to reveal some of the data today. So you're the first people to see it. And then we're going to talk about the implications and 5 things companies can do to be leaders in operationalizing sustainability. So there is a global report on sustainability coming out from HBR in May. At the end, there's a QR code, or you can, track this or ask us afterwards how you get on the list to make sure that you receive this. So this is a company, it was over 500 people globally, that all different size of business. The majority of people that responded are in the executive and senior management and board level, and good global representation. And what did we find? So HBR has identified that 1 in 4 companies is what they're calling a leader, because they're widely implementing and operationalizing sustainability. And so that's like that, and of those, 82% believe that they've made significant or extensive progress against their goals. So what about the other ones, that 3 out of 4 companies that are not classified as leaders? So that includes companies that might be implementing sustainability in silos. Maybe they're doing pilots. 21% of companies have a sustainability strategy and have done nothing. So, that there are a lot of companies in that boat as well. So what's different about these companies that are leaders, right? So leaders are more likely than the other companies to have set a goal date for their sustainability. And most of them are very aggressive, and they're more likely to have said it's 2025 versus 2030. They're more likely to be confident in hitting that date, 96%. I do find it a bit challenging. Think of how many companies have done nothing, or they're only partially there, yet 77% of them feel like they're still going to hit that date. So I think they're still in that, haven't quite figured out that just having a date doesn't magically make it happen. Leaders are more likely to acknowledge that their challenge of, over this long period of time, balancing financial goals and sustainability goals is hard. So they're much more likely to say that's a challenge, and that simultaneously, they're actually doing a better job at it. So 90% have said that they are figuring out that balance, which is significantly more than the other companies. So, what else are leaders doing differently? So they're more likely to be thinking about sustainability much more holistically. They're not dividing it up. It is an enterprise organization. They're also, almost everybody has got, like, the leaders are involved and the board's involved, but these leaders are cascading it, doing education, changing mindsets and behaviors through the organization, faster to department heads, to that middle manager, to people managers, and to frontline employees. And the ones that are doing that, because they're doing that cascading, they're finding that the speed of making progress and achieving goals is being accelerated, right? That's pretty intuitive. You would assume that that would happen, but it's great to see some data that's proving that pushing it through the organization is speeding up progress. Something that was interesting for all companies, leaders, and everyone is 2/3 are really acknowledging that this is different. Sustainability is different. It needs a different approach. Of course, they're having challenges with the technology side. They're also acknowledging that there's challenges with measurement. There's quite a few people here that'd be happy to help them do that. They're really having a hard time, and we're hearing this a lot, understanding how does it impact each function, each market, each division? Everybody needs their own plan. What's happening with the different roles is a challenge, and that they feel like they underestimated how big a change it is and how hard that is going to be. So with that in mind, how can we take that data, probably validated what a lot of you were already felt to be true, and how do we translate that into some tips and some ideas on how you can make progress and act like these leaders? Andy.
Thanks, Cheryl. So what we want to talk about now is really sort of 5 ways to become like those leaders that were identified in the data. How can you become sort of ahead of the pack in terms of operationalizing your sustainability strategies? And we've got 5 kind of areas or ways that we'd like you to consider to do that. It's not exhaustive. It's based on our experience of working with our clients, and it's also based on some of those things that we were seeing within the data. Our first tip is around dispelling sustainability confusion and committing from the top. I think in the first panel session, they talked a little bit around how everyone has a different opinion on what do the different things mean, and it's causing paralysis, or it's causing a mismatch in expectations for different people. And that's happening within organizations as well as in society and in government and public and private partnerships as well. If we refer back to the data, we had 63% of all respondents agreeing that implementing sustainability strategies needs a different approach to other changes. And one of the key things behind that is the complexity of the topics, the complexity of the theory that's behind it, and the knowledge gap. This is a new thing for people. Some people are very experienced, have a lot of knowledge about it. Others, they're just coming on board and don't really understand how they can be meaningfully involved. So what have we learned? I think that one of the first tip we've got there is really defining what your sustainability strategy means for your business and connecting it to your purpose and other things. It can't be in a silo. It can't be the CSO's focus alone. It really needs commitment from the top, from the board. There's going to be a lot of cross-functional efforts in operationalizing sustainability. You need someone that's able to cut through all of that and enable you to make progress. And then finally, is there a way to kind of humanize the theory and translate what potentially is complex into something that people can understand, maybe illustrating with stories? So that's our first tip. Our second is around prioritization. I'm trying to think of the name of that film. You can't do everything everywhere all at once. I think I got that right. But really, this is massive. How are you going to enable the organization to get a hold of what your sustainability strategy is and to deliver and make progress on it? So some tips or things that we're noticing around that really it makes sense to be clear on what you're prioritizing versus not. You may have 10 commitments or impact commitments in your business. Are you going to take on all of those at once at the same time? Is that going to be able to give you the progress that you'd like to show to your employees, your investors, your shareholders, your stakeholders? Do you have a holistic roadmap that shows what impact you're going to deliver at different staging points or waypoints on the way, so that you can keep everyone engaged with progress rather than them seeing this staggering amount of change that you're going after? And really, can you marshal your resources with a change plan that looks at maybe certain functions going before others, or certain parts of the business to experiment with things? All of that should hopefully sort of deal with some of the issues that we're seeing. The third tip, I actually asked a question about this in the first session, was about how do we support leaders to help with this change journey? And our tip here is about rebalancing leader incentives and supporting their actions every day. 83% of leaders in the study said balancing that long-term versus short-term aims was something that was really tricky to handle. So I think what we've seen is that the companies that are putting in place a mix of incentivization between traditional and more sustainability-related performance measures and making that into incentives for their leaders is actually helping. Really supporting and asking leaders to talk about how they're making the changes happen in their area of the business. And then also, are we allowed to grant leaders some permission to make trade-offs in certain situations? Are we allowed to give them the flexibility to try and balance their short-term aims versus their long-term, rather than always having to default every time to a certain way? Our next tip is really around no one size fits all. Different areas of the business are going to need to know different things at different times. And really, it's about understanding what people need to know when and activating a tiered learning and engagement model for them. So how can we, one, ensure that they're getting that tailored approach, but also, at the same time, ensure that they're taken along on the journey, that you're communicating a narrative and you're communicating the wins as you go along this journey. And then finally, how can we equip managers to be able to engage their teams on what their teams can do day to day around this? And then our final tip is, of course, about culture. So the organizations that are successful realize this is a long-term culture change. They've got to create a movement across their whole business to be able to keep people involved and to deliver them towards these goals that are sometimes decades in the future. And how can you do that? I think that one of the key points is breaking down these big objectives into small, doable habits and actions for individuals. They don't necessarily need to be, coming up with the biggest idea that's going to revolutionize the business on day one, but what can they do within their job? How can they get involved and contribute to it? For some of the bigger ideas, not all of them are going to work. Everyone's trying something new to advance towards these sustainability goals. How can you make experimentation okay? How can you, it's a little bit like the tech industry, with people being able, when they're creating minimal viable product, can you show you're working? Can you be brave enough to say, I'm not sure whether this is going to work, and is the organization going to be supportive enough? And maybe having programs that can help with that. And then finally, the bottom one is, are there enough opportunities for employees to take ownership of ideas or initiatives or be involved? All of these things are going to help on that long-term culture change journey that the leaders are going on. So those are our 5 tips. I think they apply sort of wherever you are within your journey to become a sustainability leader. Some people start from being very purpose-driven, yet haven't got everything in place. Others are there looking at very much a compliance approach. But all of these tips, I think we've tried to make them as applicable to wherever you are within that journey. And I think the key element is that at its heart, this is also a human-centered change that organizations are going on. And really, some of the techniques around really putting ourselves in the different employees, leaders, managers, all the different stakeholders' shoes, and applying that kind of human-centric change approach is really going to help us to get towards that goal of long-term sustainability. So Cheryl mentioned it at the start. That was a very small snapshot of some of the report. We have a booth over there. You've got a QR code here. And yeah, come and talk to us. We'd love to talk about this topic. We don't have all the answers, but we're trying to get there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Wait, you've got some questions? Yep, questions? Yep. I think we've got time for some questions.
If you have any questions, please just
Thank you very much. My name is Sukomi. I'm from Central Bank of Nigeria. I think I like what you said concerning the area of corporate governance. You know, it has to be from top to bottom. So if you can just sort of elaborate on that as well, because, you know, if the corporate governance is fine, then the other part of the ESG will be good. That's my contribution. Thank you.
So did you want us to, that's a good comment. Did you want us to comment on that or? Sure. I mean, I do think, I mean, one of the challenges is that a lot of companies aren't good at pulling corporate strategies through all the way through their organization anyways, not something that's as complicated as this. And for people, you know, this might feel very risky, and most cultures are risk averse and people worry about things. So that's why some of this human centricity, we all have to acknowledge that all change, even when change is amazing, change is hard. We're all hardwired as humans to resist change, and so this will be scary for some people in ways that senior people wouldn't realize that it is. You know, there's some of the drama behind it. So I think that that's really important, all the clarity of communications, being really clear about the behaviors that are expected of people, and a lot of modeling.
I think if I add to that point, there's something that I've seen sort of put into place across a few businesses is a sustainability-focused board, almost to mirror the main board. That's task is, because you know, some of the board members, by their nature of their job, they've probably been in business for a very long time and are used to working in the well, I'm just going to call it the traditional method. Can we supplement them and provide advice by setting up a mirror board that is able to challenge and also work with them, so that they're able to be, you know, educated in a safe way that isn't risky for them, and also they have people to rely on. So that's one tactic that I've seen sort of employed to ensure that they're able to, that governance angle is covered.
Thank you.
Any more?
Thanks. You spoke about rebalancing leader incentives, short-term, long-term, classic, and more sustainability-focused. Have you seen any good examples of sustainability-focused leader incentives?
So not, I'm going to say not totally yet. We've seen examples of where that's where. I'll give there's one publicly known one, which is the CEO of Starbucks had an incentive within his that he was compensated on, which was about the removal of plastic, straws and other items from Starbucks stores, and that happened pretty quickly. How can you mix the two together is sort of, I suppose, the answer, and I think a lot of people who are kind of far more focused on actually that kind of element of it within people functions are focusing on. So I'd love to see it. I think it's a really key bit that helps behavior and mindset change. Exactly what those are, I think is probably someone with slightly different expertise to me to focus on.
A good example of how HR needs to jump in to the operationalizing. I think there's one over, there's a lady over here.
Thank you very much. One question on timeline. And is this kind of a one-off process, or would you say it's kind of iterative? Can you just maybe a little bit elaborate on how long does it take and how often to do it, what to repeat?
I don't think anyone's got to the end yet, but I'll give it a go. It's definitely iterative, and it's about creating. I mean, sometimes we talk about creating a change engine or a change muscle behind these plans. Creating that staggered plan, that's going to have to be periodically sort of updated, and figuring out exactly what the markers are on that plan, because I mean, as you can see, the world is changing sort of rapidly whilst these plans are being made. I think if we, you know, plans that were made sort of a year ago, big things have happened in the world that are impacting the ability to deliver on those plans. You know, the oil price, you've got the war, different things like that, depending on what industry you are, would mean you need to have a system set up to be able to pivot against these. And I think having the systems and the focus in place is really important, because yes, it's going to have to be iterative, but then can you have clear commitments or a focus that gives the solid core to what you're doing, and then the priorities perhaps can flex.
And I'll jump on with just one more point, where a lot of companies that we've worked with and seen that they have had to make the adjustment that this can't just be a top-down plan. There's an enterprise plan, and then every division and every region, and it comes like this, is because of the nature of sustainability. It's very bottom-up. We're going to do this thing in this market, and this thing and this thing. So there's all these different approaches and these different plans, and they're coming from everywhere. So somehow that top-down and that bottom-up need to meet, and companies aren't used to that. And so that's part of why there's so much uncertainty. Why is this small pocket of the company over here, and they're charged with making progress this year, but this part doesn't have to do anything for 2 more years? And that's just kind of messing with companies and that psyche. So that's why there's so much acknowledgement. This takes a different way. And with that, we're over
this
time
screen's
now,
gone
we're told.
really red.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
and
everyone.
hopefully talk to you later.